This is the current trajectory of American military spending since the outbreak of hostilities with Iran. The U.S. burned through $16 billion in just the first 2 weeks. By now, total expenditures have already climbed past the $26 billion mark. This conflict is a departure from standard U.S. military operations. The defining difference? The adversary. Iran is a formidable power that does not want to break yet. It has spent 4 decades preparing for exactly this moment, hardening its infrastructure, dispersing its assets, and building a network of proxies that stretches from Baghdad to Beirut. Iraq collapsed in 21 days. Afghanistan held on for 20 years, but neither had a navy, ballistic missiles, or leverage over global oil shipping lanes. So far, Iran is telling the world that it's something else entirely. Over the past 50 years, the United States has conducted over 100 military operations. Some were unilateral, others were launched under the banner of NATO or in tandem with strategic partners. Historically, the U.S. employs a specific pre-game tactic, destabilizing the target country from within to force a regime change before the first shot is even fired. These methods include organizing and fueling mass protests, financing specific political factions and bribing key officials, flooding the information space with propaganda, stoking ethnic divisions, and imposing heavy economic sanctions. Notable figures ousted through such strategies include Mohammad Mossadegh, the former Iranian prime minister who nationalized Iran's oil. In 1953, he was overthrown and replaced by the Shah. Patrice Lumumba, the first prime minister of the independent Congo. The U.S. funded his rivals to eliminate him. He was eventually captured and executed in 1961 during the rise of the U.S.-backed leader Mobutu. Saddam Hussein. For years, the U.S. funded internal opposition groups before the 2003 invasion finally toppled his regime, leading to his execution by local authorities. The U.S. followed this same blueprint prior to the current strikes on Iran. The primary demand was the total dismantling of Iran's nuclear program. Iran refused, citing the double standard regarding Israel's nuclear capabilities, which the U.S. supports. Israel's goal is clear: the collapse of the Tehran government and the destruction of its missile and nuclear infrastructure. In short, the U.S. and Israel have gone to war on the grounds that Iran is becoming too powerful in the Middle East. Now, let's analyze the process of weakening Iran over the last few years. In May 2018, Trump reimposed sweeping economic sanctions against Iran.
The United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
Iran was cut off from the global financial system and lost the ability to sell its oil on international markets.
We've literally locked up tens and tens of billions of dollars.
Additionally, Trump threatened 25% tariffs on any country that continued to trade with Iran. Following years of economic strangulation, Israeli strikes in June 2025 added further pressure targeting nuclear facilities, military sites, and key commanders in what became known as the 12-Day War. Then, beginning on December 28, 2025, protests erupted across Iran, the largest since the 1979 revolution. Soon after, in January 2026, Trump threatened direct military intervention. Finally, on February 28, 2026, while indirect nuclear negotiations were still underway, the US and Israel launched a surprise attack on Iran. And so the war began. The initial US strategy was a high-intensity bombing campaign targeting key infrastructure and officials, including Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, in hopes of a quick surrender. However, the death of Khamenei did not trigger a collapse. Instead, it acted as a unifying force. A new leadership has stepped in, and the Iranian military machine continues to function. Iran isn't just taking hits, it's swinging back. It has launched frequent strikes on U.S. bases in neighboring countries and has begun blocking the Strait of Hormuz to choke the global economy. Looking at the 28-day spending chart, the disparity is staggering. The U.S. has now spent an estimated $26 billion since strikes began on February 28. Almost $12 billion burned through in the first 6 days alone, according to a Pentagon briefing to the Senate. Iran's entire annual military budget, by comparison, sits at around $10 billion. The U.S. has reportedly used 30% of its missile stockpile. Replenishing these munitions takes over 6 months. While both sides are running low, the risk is higher for Washington. Iran is fighting one war. The U.S. must keep reserves ready for Russia in Ukraine and potential conflict with China. If the U.S. is committed to winning, why is its equipment so prohibitively priced? Much of the U.S. arsenal was designed in the 20th century to be big and scary for deterrence against the Soviet Union, not for cost-effective modern efficiency. Private defense contractors are incentivized to build the most expensive tech possible. They influence politicians and generals through lobbying and contributions to ensure the state keeps buying high-priced hardware. Experts say this pay-to-play system is too deeply rooted to be reformed quickly.
The United States military began major combat.
President Trump launched this campaign to solidify his image as a strong commander. Flush with the success of removing Maduro from Venezuela in a single night, he entered this conflict with high confidence. But Iran is not Venezuela. While Venezuelan elites often had families and assets in the West, making them easy to flip, the Iranian people are unified by a culture of martyrdom and national defense. Even the pro-Western youth in Tehran have seen their views of the U.S. sour since the bombings began. The next logical step was a ground invasion, but experts believe this was a bad idea. If U.S. troops entered Iran, they would likely only be able to do so from the direction of Iraq, with the help of the Kurds. However, the Kurdish leader has already expressed his opposition to such cooperation. Secondly, the American people do not support this war. The ideology that usually unites and pushes soldiers into battle is almost non-existent here. In fact, for many Americans, Iran is not seen as an enemy, but rather as a hero showing the best example of how to defend one's own country. The eyes of ordinary people in the U.S. are being opened to many things. They are starting to sense the extent to which their country has fallen under the influence of Israel and have begun to realize that this war holds no benefit for the United States. This conflict has exposed the limits of American hegemony. Billions are being spent, stockpiles are dwindling, and public anger is rising. There is no off-ramp for either side. Negotiations failed 5 times before the war. As Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi recently stated, Iran is ready for a long, decentralized struggle. He said that stability will only return when the U.S. acknowledges its mistakes and allows regional powers to manage their own security.